Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Spirit Side. We are back in action. I've taken a little bit of time off, and for those of you who have been wondering where I've been, especially those of you who listen to the show on the video platforms like YouTube, I generally don't post updates there. I'm going to leave a link to my audio podcast platform wherever you're listening to this on the video platforms because if I'm absent there, usually if you go to my regular podcasting audio platforms, that's where I post updates if there's any changes or if I'm going to be away for a while for any reason. So you might want to copy that link somewhere where you can keep up on those updates. But just recently, I had a couple of routine procedures done for some varicose veins in my one leg, and it's pretty simple. You're in, you're out. It's not something you're spending the night in the hospital for. It's a very quick procedure. But I haven't had a lot of medical procedures done in my life, thank God, and knock on wood. So any kind of anesthesia, even the light stuff, it makes me kind of groggy for a couple of days afterwards. So I had to have that done twice, one in the side of the leg and one in the back of the leg. So the 22nd and the 29th, I had to have these two procedures done. So I just took a little time off for, a little bit of recovery and just focused on work, when, I wasn't having the post anesthesia cloudy head. And but now we're back. Everything's behind me, and life gets back on track. And today on the show, I want to talk to you all about coming from the skies. And this is a subject a lot of people have asked me about, and I haven't really spoken about it that much. And over the years, I've been doing podcasting, just mentions of it here and there. But I think it's kind of high time to maybe talk about this because this is going to tie into another conversation that we are going to get in a little bit later this week. And I think, again, as always, I think this is an important conversation, and I think it bears some thinking about. It does for me because of my personal experience, and people can think I'm batty, people can think it's nutty, they can think whatever, they desire to think, but I think we're going to get into some things after this conversation that are interesting. At least I think they are. So, what I want to talk to you about in this particular show, coming back from the break, is my personal angelic experience. And again, this isn't something I go all over the world or all over the internet talking about. I just never wanted to be one of those people. This was an experience that was personal to me, but it also speaks to all of us in a lot of ways when it comes to treating one another well, living in harmony together, loving one another. So there really is kind of some universal lessons in my personal experience. And I did write a book a number of years ago about my experience called An Angel Came Down. And that is still available on Amazon, paperback and digital format for only like $2.99 or something like that, if anybody wanted to read it. So again, these are things I usually don't put out there or talk about at length. I and I think it's because, I mean, this happened to me in 1979, and I never told a soul about it until the year 2003. And the first reason I never really talked about it is because, my family, they were the kind of people that when I was a kid, you didn't talk about these kinds of things or what was on your mind or how you really felt about something. We were one of those families for a while, largely because of my father, I think. Um, you just kept your feelings and your thoughts buried. Shut up and live the status quo. Be grateful you got a roof over your head and food on the table. It was, that kind of thing. And then as I got older, I thought about talking about it a little bit, but you know, uh, I saw the fanaticism, all the people and the cult leaders and everybody. I saw Jesus. I saw an angel. I saw the Virgin Mary. These people all over the place on the talk shows and the books. And I always told myself, I said, man, I don't want to be that because this kind of thing, this kind of experience, it's not a circus. It's not something that you're selling tickets to a show and running all over advertising. Oh, I had this experience. Oh, look how special I am. I don't think I'm special. I think we're all special, and any of us could have an experience like this if we just connect, with our heart and with our faith. So, I never wanted to be that person that's the spectacle or, trying to gain an audience. I'm not the guy who wants to go on talk shows. I'm not the guy who wants to go out and do, big public book signings and, talk in front of big crowds about, it's just the way I am. And I've always looked at it that my experience will touch those who need to be touched by it, because it's something that's personal, it's something that's sacred, and it shouldn't be um, made a show of, in that way that a lot of people do. So, that being said, I'm going to break with tradition because, like I said, this is going to open up to some bigger conversations during the week that I think are interesting and important for those who need to hear, and consider what I'm going to say in the next few podcasts. So, my story starts when I was 12 years old. This was 1979. I was in the sixth grade and life was just horrendous. Um, I grew up in a household where my father drank a lot. He was very verbally abusive. He was very selfish. He was the kind of guy that he could fly into these fits of rage over any little thing and just break things in the house, throw things, yell, smash things. Um, he was just a bully that way. And my mother was she had a lot of anxiety. My mother was a good person, but when she was younger and my brother and I were little, she really didn't have a clue, how to interact with us sometimes or to stick up for herself. I mean, she was taking pills to calm her nerves. So her anxiety, I guess you could say I was a bit of an empath because I definitely picked up on the nervous energy that was in the house all the time. And it was very uncomfortable for me. And then going to school, I was the kid that was always bullied. The way I looked, the way I dressed. I mean, I was the kid that was always beat up. You know, um, School wasn't a happy place. My brother and I had some neighborhood friends, one kid in particular that lived across the road from us. But, when you have a friend come over and you just want to hang out, you want to read comic books, you want to, do whatever we're going to do, and your friend starts insulting you because that's how he and his family were. I mean, you could be a stranger off the street meeting them for the first time and be like, oh, look at his haircut, look at his shirt, look at the way he dresses, look at the way he walks, listen to the way he talks. Oh, this kid's a retard. And they thought it was funny, but it wasn't funny. It was, and they did it to one another. They did it to everyone else. It was, it wasn't a nice atmosphere. So, from the second grade, well, really, I would have to say the first grade, up to the sixth, things got progressively worse, at home and at school. And I was a very sensitive kid, and I remember being very depressed and having anxiety attacks, though I didn't know what they were. I was made fun of so much by people at school, by, our supposed friends, that, I thought surely there must be something wrong with me. Our own father would call me and my brother, wimps, faggots, retards, worthless. If he was our age, he would, he could kick our asses with one hand tied behind our backs. We were weird kids, and other family members would join in with him, saying this kind of thing. And basically, it was because we were more creative kids. We weren't. We were the kind of kids that weren't really interested in going out and riding mini bikes and playing sports. I mean, we would and we did, at certain times. But we were more creative and cerebral, I guess. We were comic books and superheroes and writing and art and drawing and just really actually talking about things between ourselves. And that was considered very weird by a lot of the family members around us. So, we were the weird kids. So, I kind of grew up, by the time I hit the sixth grade, I looked at myself as the weird kid. I couldn't stand the way I looked. I couldn't stand the way I talked. Everybody must be right. There must be something wrong with me. But then I kind of fell into this notion, and I always had this, and you've heard me talk about it on the show before, this connection with God, even before I knew who or what God was. I always felt that presence around me that felt very protecting, very loving. And so I did grow up talking to God. I would talk to God all the time. And between the fifth and the sixth grade, I remember sitting in my room. My brother and I shared a room, so it was hard to get privacy. But at those moments where, I was able to have some privacy, alone, I would talk to God and just, I remember saying many times to God, what hope is there in this world if this is the way we treat one another? Calling names, so much hatred, pick on the way, we look, I'm a kid in the fifth and sixth grade, and I'm sitting there talking to God saying, where's the love in this world? It doesn't seem like anybody loves anybody. And if this is the way the world is if this is the way family treats one another, if this is the way friends treat one another, there's no hope for any of us. This world is completely lost. And it's going to be the most absolutely miserable place any of us ever lived in, you know. And I remember when I was in the sixth grade, I had this teacher by the name of Mrs. Blake. And to top things off, I mean, I was like, I don't know what the deal was, but again, I was really targeted by this teacher. If there was something she could yell at me about or start ranking on me over, she would do it. Even if another kid in the classroom did the same thing, for an example, one day we had this quiz, And she said, "There's no pencil sharpening during the quiz. You're in your seat, you take the quiz, you don't get up for anything." I don't know why that was, but that was her rule. And I was taking the quiz, and lo and behold, just out of dumb luck, the point of my pencil broke, and I was like, "Oh crap!" I didn't have an extra pencil. And I see, two or three other kids get up and go sharpen their pencils, and she didn't say a word. So I say to myself, "Well, it must be okay," because I see, like, two or three other kids go sharpen their pencils. I'm going to take a stab at it, and I'm going to go sharpen my pencil. And I just got about 1 foot from the pencil sharpener, and she leapt up from her desk and just lit into me. "What are you doing? I told you no pencil sharpening. Are you stupid? Don't you listen?" I mean, she was all over me like, as they used to say, like a cheap suit. This was, or ugly on an ape, and so that's the way the sixth grade was for me. And I remember one day in November, it was around November 15th of 1979. It was a particularly lousy day at school. And I remember coming home and just like tossing my, little book bag that carried my book supplies, onto the dining room table, going straight into my room and, just laying on the bed and listening to music. That was my escape. Going into the room and just losing myself in the music that I liked and daydreaming while I listened to it, daydreaming of a better life, and having, better friends and people around that, treated one another well. And it happened that day that my brother went shopping with my one uncle. They went Christmas shopping. They went to the mall. And when my uncle went Christmas shopping, um, he went for hours. I mean, it was crazy. So I had a while to be by myself, and this was a little bit. I think before dinner time. It must have been between 4:30, 5 o'clock. That uh, the sun was setting. It was getting dusk outside, but it was a really windy, snow flurry type of November day. And it was one of those days where, there was the night sky, but it had you could see those big black clouds, that sometimes are in the sky in the winter. And I remember laying on the bed, looking out of this window at the foot of the bed, up at the sky, at the clouds. And I remember talking to God again and just saying, "God, you have to help me because, this world is so pathetic, so ugly. You know, I don't feel like I fit in anywhere. I don't feel like anybody, likes me. I don't feel like anybody cares about me. I don't feel like anybody cares about anybody." And, I remember asking God, I remember saying, "God, you have to help me. Show me that there's love in this world. You have to show me." Now I'm 12 years old saying this. I mean, that's, whether that's a deep thought for a kid or just totally messed up. I mean, that's for you, the listener, to decide, I guess. But I remember saying this with such a strength and such a passion. And it was at those moments, one of those moments of a more childhood faith, the childlike faith that I somehow knew at that moment God was going to do something because this was 0 hour. I was at like the end of my rope with all of this. And I remember looking out of the window at the foot of my bed and I saw this pinpoint of light. Now, here's where it gets weird. I remember seeing this pinpoint of light in the sky near one of the black clouds. And it proceeded to get bigger and bigger as it came down closer and closer to the ground. And suddenly, this point of light was right outside of my bedroom window, but it was no longer a point of light. It was basically what we would call a classic UFO. I describe in the book that this thing was way too big to fit in our little backyard. I mean, this thing would have taken down trees and trees in the neighbor's house. I mean, it had to be something that was spiritual, interdimensional. The space that it was filling, it was too big for the physical space that it should have been filling. And I remember this thing outside of the window, and there were rows of like windows around the rim, and it was rotating slowly outside the window, and finally it came to a stop with one of the windows around the rim facing my bedroom window. But this particular window or doorway was open. And standing in that doorway, standing in that window, whatever you want to call it, was a girl about my age. And she had long blonde hair. She had on like this silver gray jumpsuit, something that you would imagine, like, I don't know, astronaut, alien, back in the day. But she had these big feathery wings coming out of her back. She looked like an angel. And I remember it was strange before all of this happened, because it seemed, when the backing up a little bit, when I saw the point of light in the sky, it seemed like there was a white mist in the room. And then everything blurred for a second. And again, I describe it in the book as the reality around me running like a watercolor left out in the rain for a split second. And then everything came back into focus, and here's, this thing outside the window. So I see this girl, and, I'm freaked out. I go from laying on my back on the bed, listening to my music, to sitting up on the bed, kind of crouched toward the head of the bed, ready to make a hell of a mad dash to the bedroom door, which is to my right, not very far away. All I had to do was like zip out of the bed, and around there, I can whip open that door and run like hell and get out of the room. So I'm ready to run. I was definitely, what the hell is that thing outside the window? And who and what the hell is that with the wings standing there, in this doorway? It was definitely anxiety inspiring, yet there was something that kept me uh, just kind of rooted to the bed. I wanted to run, but yet I didn't want to run. I can't explain it. And I hear this girl speaking to me. Now she's outside the window, but I hear her speaking to me in my mind. Her mouth isn't moving. I'm looking between the door and the girl, but I hear her speaking in my mind, and she's telling me not to be afraid, that she's here to help me. And when I hear the voice in my mind, it has more of a little bit of a calming effect, but that fight or flight anxiety is still there. And she asks permission to enter the room, saying she's not there to hurt me. She's not going to do anything to me. She's there to help me. And pretty much after some consideration, and I don't even know why, I say, okay, come in, you know. And I remember her stepping out of this doorway on this UFO type of thing and coming right through the window like a ghost or an apparition. And now she's standing at the foot of the bed. And pardon my French, but I'm 12 years old and I'm pretty much like, oh shit, maybe this wasn't a good idea. And, again, she reassures me, she's not there. She's not going to hurt me. She's here to help me. And she kind of goes on this spiel, that God heard my prayers, my cry for help, and that he sent her. And, I'm not going to get into the whole dialogue, at the moment, but, as she's telling me these things, I'm feeling like I know this girl. There's something familiar about her. Like, I'm creeped out by her, yet somehow she feels like an old friend. And I guess that's the feeling that kept me from running. Like, I'm afraid of her. But there's something about her, like I know her. She's not a stranger, Suffice to say, she tells me that her name is Sarah and that she's there to help me and to help me get through a lot of this pain and anguish and confusion that I'm currently facing in life. Basically heal my emotions and my heart. So, long story short, by the time she's done speaking to me for a while and, asking me some questions, I feel a little more at ease. I almost feel kind of glad that she's there because she's showing unconditional love, friendship. She cares about, excuse me, she cares about what I'm feeling. And that was kind of a novelty for me. So, again, long story short, because I don't want to make this podcast, 1,000 hours long. But throughout that winter, she visited often, and she told me if ever I need her, just say or think her name, and she will come, which I did. I put that into practice, and if I just thought the name, if I was alone in my room and I thought Sarah, she would come. She was there. So she really talked me through, a lot of these situations, behaviors, the way my family acted, the way people at school acted, the way my friends acted. A lot of kind of deeper moral lessons, about the universe and God and, the behavior of people and loving others despite all of the mistakes that they make and, all of this type of thing. And again, it was a little while that things seemed to be better. And I was like, wow, she really did help. I feel better. Everybody, I'm putting into practice the things that she's telling me to do. And everybody seems to be acting better around me. School's, a bit more tolerable. So I was happy as a clam. Hey, it's great. Maybe life is about to change. But being a kid, 12 years old, once life starts improving a little bit, I start kind of forgetting about Sarah a little more as time goes on until I didn't call her at all. And the funny thing about it was about a month or so after I didn't call her anymore, uh, life really went to hell in a handbasket. It went back to being the old, terrible, you know, scenario that it always was. But after that, and again, I'm not going to get into all of the details here, but I saw her for the first time in 1979. Then I didn't see her again until I believe 1983. Then I saw her again in 1991 and then again in 2003. And I haven't really had an encounter since. But to wrap up this podcast, in 1983, I hadn't seen her, since the winter of 1979, and now it's the winter of 1983. And life was complicated in a different way because I'm older now. By the time I'm hitting 14, 15, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start taking matters into my own hands. I'm getting a little older now. I start lifting weights. I take an interest in boxing and martial arts. And I was a pretty good fighter back in the day even as a kid, I took it seriously. So I was like, I'm not going to start trouble, but if anybody messes with me, any kids at school, I'm going to mess. And I did. If anybody, I didn't pick a fight, but if somebody started with me at school, uh, you know, I took them out. I took them out hardcore. As I say in the book, I was fighting in school. I even stepped up to the teachers if they targeted me. I stepped up to my father. I karate kicked him through the screen door in the front of our house. I was hell on wheels. Mess with me. I don't know, as Paulie said in, I think it was Rocky 4, I would blast their teeth down the throat. There was no holds barred. And so by the time a couple of years of that, 1983, I just hit a wall. I was emotionally exhausted and I was having like anxiety attacks again because I ran pretty much over 2 years on like pure adrenaline, you know, working out, fighting, being ready for a fight, just high strung, that kind of kid. And I wasn't a bad kid. I didn't purposely attack anybody. If I got bullied and I knocked the bully down a couple times, I'd always say, hey, let's stop before somebody gets really hurt, namely you, because you're not doing so well. I always tried to make peace, but for some reason, people didn't want to keep the peace, even when they're getting, you know, beat down. It was really peculiar. I would share my lunch money with my worst enemies. I was always trying to make peace. So I wasn't, you know, a hateful kid or wanting to purposely fight or hurt people. But if you came at me then of course I'm not going to take it. I'm going to end the scenario quick. So living that way for 2 years or so, pure adrenaline, I just hit the wall. And when I was 16, I left my parents' house. I went to live with my grandparents because they lived in this big old house out in this little town called West Town, New York. And it was a lot more peaceful at Granny's where I could lick my wounds and harden my scars. And try to, understand, because this was a new kind of anxiety attack that I didn't know what it was. It was the kind where you feel surreal, kind of like you're slipping. Nothing around you is real. You're not real. Really strange feeling. I didn't know what it was. So I just retreated to my grandparents' house, and and again, this was maybe late November, early December, 1983. Another cold, windy, snow flurry night. Full moon peeking through the dark clouds, and I'm walking down the country road, and poof, there's Sarah, and she helps me through, another hump, and I end up, um, things getting better, and that is kind of let it go to the wayside again. You know, Human idiocy, I guess. I didn't see her again until 1992, and that's the thing I really want to focus on in the next podcast, where my life was at that moment. Um, some of the things that were said to me, particularly one of the things that was said to me during that particular encounter, that I look at today and I think could have significance in our time, in our future. And that's what I want to really get into, the 1992 encounter, in the next show. So there's a little bit of a background on my angelic experience. For those of you that might, and I'm not making a sales pitch, I don't, doesn't bother me if people read the book, don't read the book, but if anybody wants to read it, they want to get the whole, all the dirt on my crazy ass life and my crazy experience, I'll leave a link to that below in the podcast description as well. Because there was a lot, and there was just a lot of craziness, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of disappointments, and that's why I always say, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for God, because I made a lot of mistakes. I lived in an environment around people. I had friends, my parents, especially my father, growing up. I had a lot of opportunities to make a lot of mistakes. But somehow, some way, there was always someone there that had my back and brought me back to the right path. Wanted me, and inspired me to want to be a better person. You couldn't be around this being Sarah, um, and not come away from that wanting to share that kind of love and that kind of light with other people that I got from her. It was just impossible. You couldn't do it. She always inspired me and made me want to be a better person, and to say, I want to do for other people what she did for me, because that was just awesome. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. But it was also strange. There's a lot of strange things with this particular encounter, and some people may believe it, others may not. Alls I know is that it changed my life, and as I said, it may have um, possibly some ramifications for our future, all of our future. Especially with some of the things that are happening in the world right now, and that's eventually what we're going to get into. So I appreciate all of you listening. I hope you enjoyed, my abbreviated telling of um, my angelic encounter, and we're going to pick it up next time in the winter of 1992. What was going on? Sarah showed up, and um, told me some things that were really interesting. And it wasn't actually, she never told me that she was an angel or my guardian angel until actually 2003, the last time that I had like this full on, you know, angelic encounter where she said, you know, I am your guardian angel. And when I first came to you over the years, you had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of struggles with religion. You know, I came to you when you were quite young. I didn't want to frighten you, so I came to you looking like a girl your age. And she always grew as I grew. You know, when I saw her when I was 12, she looked 12. I saw her in 1983 when I was 16, and she looked about 16. I saw her again in 1991 when I was in my early 20s or whatever, and she looked the same age. Then I saw her in 2003, where I think I was in my 30s, and she looked about the same. But anyway, she said she progressed with me. She never wanted to, you know, put this thought on me. Oh, you know, she's an angel. I have to act, you know, holy or not really say what's on my mind because I might be judged and thrown into hell. You know, the whole thing is that she wanted me to be my authentic self with her so that she could really um, help me with the situations in my life that needed correcting. But that was 2003 when she finally said yes. You know, I'm not an alien. I'm not a figment of your imagination. You know, I am your guardian angel. I've been with you, you know, all of your life. And I asked for proof, you know, because that was a thing too. I always said, hey, maybe I'm a nutball. Maybe I got some kind of, you know, mental illness going on and I'm hallucinating. And I asked this question and I asked for proof. And proof definitely came with witnesses around um, who saw things the same thing I saw and called it out before I even, you know, had time to comment on it. So interesting stuff, and we'll get into some of that later. Suffice to say, we're going to get into the 1992 encounter next show. And until then, I thank you for listening. Stay in love, walk in the light, everyone, and I will talk to you next time here on the Spirit Side.